if your goal is to get big overnight, that's a get rich quick scheme, and it's not going to work.
Todd, welcome to the Small Streamer, Big Dreamer podcast. Thanks for taking the time to do this. How are you today?
I am doing wonderful. Yourself?
I'm doing good.
Nice.
A little bit tired, but that's the dad life, right?
Yeah, I can't comment on that too much since I'm not the same kind of dad you are, but
dad's a dad.
I feel you.
Dad's a dad. Yeah. But again, thank you for taking the time to do this. I'm super happy to have you on this episode. So I guess let's just start with introducing yourself. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Oh my goodness. So my name is Todd. I also go by Twillsie online. I am the creative director of Endless Era Gaming, cybersecurity specialist, a streamer, although I haven't streamed in a while, but I'm also a broadcast producer. And oh my goodness, I could go on.
You talked about how you haven't streamed for a while too. Can you kind of walk us through, why you haven't streamed for a while?
I haven't streamed for a while because I haven't found streaming to be totally rewarding for myself as much anymore. And one of those things is that I've taken on so many hobbies that I don't think I found a lot of time to get back into streaming anymore. I find that streaming was fun, but now what's more fun is going to events and doing streams for other people. So, for example, like doing a stream for OutaFest and doing a stream for Animathon and trying to get into bigger events and really becoming, rather than a content creator streamer, actually becoming a production broadcast streamer. So it's kind of, there's one other streamer online that's kind of like doing this as well, and his name is Cracked Coic. He still streams, but he did GameCon Canada, and I went back in stage and ran into him like, oh, hey, you're kind of doing what I'm doing. You're getting sucked into these big events because of their knowledge, know-how, and skill set, and just general hardworking attitude, right? So,
for those that don't know what Animathon is and what OutaFest is, can you talk a little bit about what they are and how did you end up getting sucked into doing broadcasting for them?
Those are so Animathon and OutaFest are in Alberta. One's in Edmonton, one's in Calgary, but they're both Japanese Cultural Society Association ran events. They are anime conventions, essentially.
All right. And how did you get sucked into doing broadcasting for them?
Valhalla.
Of course.
Yeah. Josh from Endless Era. Because he also works for ATB. ATB was a part of OutaFest, or actually is still a part of OutaFest, and Josh is like, hey, look, I have this guy who's really good at streaming, and we have this gaming community. We want to get involved and help with the whole gaming hall. And yeah, that's how that ended up happening. I think Jenny at OutaFest was just like, wow, this is so convenient, because the last guys we had for streaming kind of had to pull out and stuff like that. So it's been very fortunate. It was just like luck of the draw.
Yeah.
Animathon wasn't as much of a luck of the draw. That was more of we did OutaFest the first year, and then Lisa from Extra Life Edmonton goes and says, hey, Animathon asked me about you, and are you the person that actually wants to come up here and do this? I'm like, yeah, that's me. She's like, okay, I'm going to put in a good word for you at Animathon. And then that's how we got there as well. So we're now being dragged into so many events, or now I'm being dragged into so many events because of the production work I do in OBS and with streaming equipment. So
yeah. So I guess my question is, did you learn how to do this stuff before you started streaming? Did you learn it after? Did one thing lead to the other, or you've always had the background in production?
I never had the background in production. I had the background in design and graphics and in some motion graphics, which I started to do when I was working at PTI, when I was a graphic designer. But no, I learned all of this through streaming. I originally started streaming with my friend Ben and his friend Francois. And we all tried to start a streaming channel because Francois was kind of having a rough time with life at the time. And we're like, hey, like you could stream and possibly could make money. Like you've got free time available. So we all kind of pitched together on this one Twitch channel at a time when Twitch was a lot younger. And you could kind of get away with doing that and building that up. And Ben and I kind of like ended up doing everything, and Francois was just like, this doesn't interest me. And we're like, oh, that's fine. So Ben and I kept going, and then we started ELN, so electrical line noise, and that Twitch channel. And we grew that. And at that point in time, I was the one that was getting all of the equipment. Like before there was NDI, I was creating like Nginx reverse proxy RTMP servers to bring in feed ingests from Ben's machine to do a 2-person 1-stream setup before Twitch had any of this technology. So all of that was like this big experiment in streaming. And I just I don't know what it was, but it just sucked me in, and I wanted to know every little aspect and the technology behind all of it. And that's what happened essentially. And now, after 8 years of streaming, essentially, I've got all the skill set and technology that now I've gone into events, and they're like, no, we really need you to help us because everybody else does not that great of a job, at least here in Alberta. So
cool. Yeah, that's really fascinating because, I mean, for I guess those who don't know what NDI is, can you just explain that a little bit? Because I understand what NDI is to some extent, but
right,
for new or beginner streamers, they don't necessarily know what that technology is.
NDI is a network-based video transport protocol, kind of like SDI for cables, but it's actually over your network. So what you can do is, instead of having a capture card on 2 computers, you could actually just use NDI to capture 1 computer, send that video over the network, and load it up on another computer, and it's near instantaneous. It's probably something like about 60 milliseconds of latency, which is really low.
Yeah, that's really
very low for especially for broadcasts. So
yeah, because even the most higher end capture cards will do something like 50 milliseconds of latency. That's on the higher end, so that's really impressive.
That's an Elgato Camlink 4K Pro can do that, and a couple of the Blackmagic capture cards can do it that low. But yeah.
Well, AverMedia is up there now with some of their stuff, but it's still pretty rare. I'd like to backtrack a little bit, and I'd like to talk about how you guys started a streaming channel. None of you guys had streamed before, and sort of you ended up taking over the technical side of things. But, as a whole, what were your biggest challenges? I guess in terms of just streaming in general. And the next thing, I guess, is having the 3 of you stream to 1 channel.
Yeah. So the biggest challenges at first were to really nail down that bandwidth quality, like paradigm. Kind of like SLR cameras. If you were to be a pro photographer, you have to get an understanding of the difference in the paradigm of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture size, right? That's the trifecta of SLR cameras. And once you master those 3, you get really good looking photos. Well, in streaming, you have something similar. You have to get this balance between bandwidth that your internet can provide for uploading, the actual encoder that you're using on the computer, and at the time it was CPU based encoding. There was none of this NVENC encoders, as well as like resolution. And that's kind of like your trifecta of streaming, that paradigm there, and how to get all of that lined up right to get a very good looking stream, not to mention also frames per second. And then the other challenge we had was just getting everybody's audio to work. And it's still a challenge that like Ben often still can run into, and I still run into sometimes. Like, you get microphones all configured, you think it's all working great, and then Windows will have changed the audio device on you, and you didn't realize that happened. So the default audio device is now all messed up. Or if you're using voice meter and you're not familiar with soundboards or mixers, how all of that works with the different buses and all the different actual faders. So it was a bit of a nightmare getting 3 people and all their audio and all of their video working, and then trying to make a stream that looked good with the limited amount of CPU resources that we had at the time.
Gotcha. Okay. So a lot of technical challenges there, which a lot of new streamers will encounter. How about the mental side of things, or the actual, you've set everything up, you're actually streaming now. What challenges came at the beginning when you guys were just starting out?
It's so much easier to press go when you've got a buddy to schedule with. But yeah, having a schedule that was consistent, like just even like for hanging out with your friend to stream, was one of the big hurdles initially. The other one is like not getting discouraged while you're in the middle of a stream. And one of the things that I wasn't doing, and that everybody will tell you, is that don't look at the view counts when you're streaming. And that was the one thing I found at first was just so hard to ignore, because you're streaming and you've got 0 viewers, 1 viewer, maybe 3, and Twitch doesn't have discoverability. It certainly didn't have it back then. It definitely doesn't still have it now, even though they're working on it. Yeah, that was probably the biggest hurdle at the time. Wanting to stream was fairly easy because I wanted to know how all of this worked at the time. But as I got more into streaming later and doing it myself, it was one of those things where it's like, if I don't have somebody to help me, like get me pumped up before a stream, which Ben was very good at doing, and I was good at helping Ben do that as well. You could just start in a bad mood, and then you're just going to have a stream where everybody notices it, and then you just don't want to be there. I've been there a couple times, and I don't want to be there and the stream early, and you're like, I'm not down.
Yeah. Thank you for being honest about it, because I think that's something that a lot of people aren't necessarily prepared for. Is they think that streaming is awesome, and it is. It really is. But there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of emotional up and down where, like you said, you'll start streaming, and if you have that viewer count on and you see 0 or it fluctuates to 3, and you're like, oh, I've got 3 viewers, and then it goes back down to 1, and then you're like, you're in the middle of the stream and you're like, what did I do wrong? Why did people leave?
What I hit? Totally.
Right? What did I say? Yeah. Or what did I do wrong? Like, am I not interesting? And all these thoughts start swirling through your head while you're streaming and trying to be entertaining and trying to play a game. How did it feel? Like, how did it feel for you, especially while you were streaming and then after?
So at first I was like, I don't understand why. So, and that drove me to make the stream even better every time. But it made me, it forced me to like work on things on the stream that really weren't that important, like higher quality encoding and trying to get, nicer microphones and nicer sound cards and stuff. And at the end of the day, that didn't actually improve any of the metrics. What improved the metrics eventually was to ignore the metrics and to not worry about what people thought of me and to just have fun. It's hard to get over that hurdle where, you're being vulnerable because you're broadcasting yourself out to random people. You don't know who they are. It's like standing up on a stage, even though you're in your house, and you're like, look at me, I'm really fun. And, you're really putting on a show. And like a real audience, you're worried of getting bottles hurled at you for whatever you're saying. But online, it's just more like you're worried about people hurling insults instead on the chat. So it's tough. It's a very vulnerable moment.
Can you talk about what you did to get over that? Or was there anything that you did that helped you get over it? I know we mentioned turning off the viewer count, all really important, but what else helped you get past those hurdles?
I think I might have to take a moment to think about an answer for that. I think a big part of it was not letting people define what my success should be. I think there was a point when I was streaming where I said in my mind, like mentally, that it's not the technology and it's not what people think. It's the shows that bring the most viewer audience are the shows where I'm the happiest internally. The shows where I'm having the most fun is where so happens to be the actual most number of viewers and the most number of engagements. It was somewhere in the ELN line of things where I took a change in the whole heart of the whole thing. Is just like, I'm just going to do the best that I can tech wise, and as long as I'm making something I'm proud of releasing, that will always drive the most for me. And that's what got me over that hurdle, is just to go, don't worry about the metrics. Just worry about how I feel about the content that gets released. And that's what kind of got me over that hurdle. It is also what led me to kind of start my own channel, because it's hard to be proud of work when you're working with other people who have different visions as well. So, like I was doing ELN for a while. We were kind of growing that stream for that channel for a bit. And I was just like, I always have to kind of go with these jokes that I don't necessarily agree with all the time. And at a time where I'm like, at the time we were trying to get like a family started, Jess and I, my wife and I. So I was just like, maybe I just need to do my own thing where I work on that and I'm proud of what I do. And that got me over that kind of like hurdle there.
And from doing what you did and just focusing on being proud of what content you put out there, did that eventually lead to more happiness? Did it eventually lead to more viewers, more followers? Can you talk more about that?
Definitely more happiness and definitely more engagement. So to me, the metric that matters to me now, if I were to look at a metric, is engagement time. It's the number of hours watched by a viewer. I'm happier if I have 5 viewers who watched me for the entire stream or for 80% of the stream or 70% of the stream than if I were to have 38 viewers that only popped in for 10 minutes, right? To me, I'm streaming, or when I was streaming, I'm streaming to make a meaningful connection. And to me, the metric that mattered the most, or not matter, but the one that correlated the most to which made me happier, was the hours watched. And I think that's a more important metric, even from a business perspective, because it's the indicator that you're actually doing quality content. And it's the indicator that if you got 5 people who will watch you for your entire duration, or more or less most of your duration, then the other challenge is just getting people to get to your stream.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, you have 5 engaged people and they're watching for the whole time. And that really means at that point, you just need to find more people to go and check you out.
Yeah.
So that was what kind of did it for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's always one of those things where, you'll ask someone, do you want 50 viewers and no one's talking, no one's chatting, and they're all lurking, which is okay too. I mean,
Absolutely.
Lurkers are important. That's a big part of Twitch. And some people, they're on Twitch, they enjoy watching, they enjoy seeing everything happen, but they don't necessarily feel comfortable or want to participate in chatting. But it's one of those questions where, would you rather have 50 people viewing you and no one chatting, or would you rather have 5 people viewing you and chatting and have a really engaging stream where there's back and forth, where you're talking with the viewers and engaging with them? It's one of those things that, I mean, most of the time I would, actually not most of the time, I would always choose the 5 viewers, the same 5 viewers that keep coming back and enjoy your content and keep talking with you and talking to each other, right? That's, the foundation of building out your stream and building a community. You see that on every single Twitch bio pages. I want to build a community, and I think a community of 6 people, including yourself, who are all engaging and really get to know each other is a lot more powerful than having 50 viewers, right?
Yeah, I totally, like, when I do stream, next time I stream, I just want 5 friends to pop on. Like, to me, at the end of the day, is like, I could ask for 30 nobodies to pop on and see what I'm up to, and I don't think I care about that. What I want emotionally deep down is I want 5 friends. They don't have to be friends I know. I just want 5 people to pop on and be like, yo, this is awesome. Like, and actually stay there for the whole time. Like, just imagine, like, when you were a kid and you sat with your friends on the couch and you played an RPG, which was 1 player. This is the same concept, right? You just want your 5 friends that you had in junior high, essentially making jokes, preferably not horrible jokes that I made when I was in junior high, but essentially, it's like, I want to recreate that when I stream. And yeah, I feel like that should be most people's goals.
Yeah. And I think it is. Maybe for some people who just started streaming, maybe they don't know that yet, which is completely okay. But yeah, it's really important to have people come by and hang out, right? It's a lot more fun when you feel like you're hanging out with people, as opposed to you're there, you're playing your game, maybe people are watching you, but there's no engagement, right? Engagement it's huge for you and I, at least, and I think for most people, that's their goal, and that's what they prefer when they're streaming. Maybe that changes when, if you get really big and you get 1,000 viewers and your chat just scrolls and scrolls and scrolls. But that's the beauty of being a small streamer, right? Is that you do have the opportunity to get to know people, and people have the opportunity to get to know you, right? That's the beautiful thing about being a smaller streamer. in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, it's kind of like you can be really butthurt about the whole situation and be like, you can go on with the mentality that I want to be the next Shroud, but you're not. You're not going to be the next Shroud. Because you're just trying to be someone who you're not. I think at the end of the day, it's like you really just have to be yourself and think of like what your friends like about you that you have already and roll with that. Because to try and be the 1 in a million streamer is a 1 in a million odds chance. You might as well buy a lottery ticket. The point is to have fun. You grow, even if you grow a little bit, you're going to grow by just having fun. And who knows, maybe you'll get big. But if your goal is to get big overnight, that's a get rich quick scheme. And it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really powerful advice. I really agree with you there. And I like to take us back a little bit because we kind of talked, or you touched on this a little bit. It's how you really wanted to put out something that you were proud of, and you didn't know all the technical things. You didn't know, what was the best microphone for your purposes, or, what sounded the best to you, or which camera to use. Can you talk about can you talk about your learning process over the time of when you were streaming? What did you learn about? And also, do you regret overproducing or, making the stream, I guess, bigger than and not scaled to your audience size?
I have never regretted that because I grew in areas that wasn't streaming because of it. Right? So there's this, like for me, the technology was interesting. And I work in IT and I work in cybersecurity and I love tech stuff. So all of this stuff, like Stream Decks and A10 minis and even MIDI controllers and sound mixers, all of that stuff was something I was always interested to begin with. Before I was streaming, I was DJing, so I knew about audio mixers and audio equipment. And that was the first thing I tackled because it was something I was already familiar with. So the first thing I tackled was like, oh man, like the microphone audio from my headset is not that great. It's picking up everything in the background. So next thing I did was I already had a good sound card for my DJ gear. So just took my existing PreSonus audio USB sound card and I was just like, okay, I just need to find a decent mic. I got an Amazon, what is it? A newer NV08, something like that. I can't remember the actual model number. And I plugged it in and it was better than what I had before. This is like, okay, this is good. This is good enough. It's not going to sound like potatoes anymore. It doesn't sound amazing. It doesn't sound like this microphone, which is the Rodecaster. Wait, I've already forgot because Rode's got the Procaster and they've got the Rodecaster, and it's super confusing. But yeah, I've got this mic and it's super good. Or the pod mic is just as good too. Not as I like this one better, but the pod mics are good too. But yeah, that was like the first step, was working on my audio because I really wanted people not to go like to leave the stream just because it hurt their ears. And I find that's like the first problem that most streamers should solve is your video could look kind of like potatoes because a stream is not just watching the stream, but it's also listening. And if your audio is whack and nobody can hear you, or you're like clipping out hard, nobody's sticking around. right? That's like listening to a podcast or a song and it's just going like this. Just like, no, I don't want to hear that. Right. So that was the first problem I wanted to solve. And it was just like, and that was the easiest one because I had, I have turntables and I've got a tractor mixer, and I'm familiar with that whole concept. But audio can be one of the hardest ones, or it has been one of the hardest ones for my friends to get their heads around because of all the audio routing, so to speak. So yeah, if I were like a new streamer and I would suggest, hey, what should you tackle first? Which is going to be the biggest hill to climb with the most reward? Audio. Understand voice meter or a sound mixer, or get a really good sound card and just understand how that all works. Like that's the biggest challenge that I had. And once I got over that, the next challenge was, like finding better encoders, getting better graphics cards. In fact, there was one point I was dual PC streaming, but the second PC that was doing the streaming was a Core i3 510, a Sandy Bridge i3, which was doing the actual encoding. And it worked better than my gaming rig because the gaming rig had to game and do the encoding at the same time. It just wasn't going to handle that. And this is also all before NVEnc. So video cards. So that would do it for you. And so I did that, and it was like a huge improvement. I was like, how is this potato processor doing it? Well, when it's the potato processor has a high enough single core clock speed, and it has enough cycles, so enough gigahertz, it can handle it fairly well, as long as that's the only task it's doing. So that's what I did for quite a while, and then like I got a 1060 which had NVEnc in it, and now I've got a 2060 and it's got an even better hardware encoder in it. So encoding was always the second challenge to improve. And I find that all the tech improvement didn't necessarily, like, it helped my channels to grow at the time. But it doesn't help my channel to grow now because everybody's got, these wicked encoders, and most people have got their audio figured out because all these consumer brands like Elgato make equipment specifically for this problem, and everything's just gotten better. So the market's gotten more competitive. So if you've got bad audio now, you don't have an excuse.
Yeah,
right? If you've
totally.
got low encoded video now, you don't really have an excuse because you're running on a graphics card that doesn't have an encoder. What is this, like 2012? Right?
Yeah.
So now, like, that's gotten competitive. But for me at the time, learning all that stuff helped me grow my stream, and it helped me grow the skill set to do these bigger events that I now do. So has it grown my channel? No. Has it grown me? Absolutely. And it's made me, like, I love doing all these big events.
Yeah. There's so much value to it, right? And, I tell my friends part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast was, there's a few reasons why I wanted to do the podcast. One, was to share my experience of streaming over the last couple of years so that new streamers or beginner streamers wouldn't have to go through as much hardship as I did to figure this stuff out, because a lot of this, I had no background in audio, I had no background in video, photography, none of that, and it was a lot of learning along the way, but it was okay. I was completely okay with it, and I'm just the kind of person who enjoys researching the crap out of everything that I do and trying to put out the best possible quality product there is, right? Or within my capability and my means, right? So did I start with, we actually have the same microphone. Did I start with the Rode Procaster? No. I started with a dynamic microphone that had gone through the ringer. It was a stage microphone that a coworker of mine, you know, it was sitting in
Nice.
his microphone closet, and he's like, "Here, you can have it." But I didn't have an XLR cable. I did not have an audio interface. I had a microphone, and I started with a $30 1080p webcam off of Amazon, right? And then, you know, I figured out that, hey, I can buy these 2 cheap, newer LED panel lights, and it would make the video look so much better than it, you know. So even if I learned, even if I bought a more expensive camera without that lighting, it still would have looked like crap. So things like that you learn along the way. And not just the technical side of things. When you stream, you know, if your intention is to start growing and to make a better stream, you tend to start learning things and experimenting with things. For me, I experiment with content a lot too now. You know, I try to you know, I don't just throw on my stream and play Apex Legends. I sort of do it with, you know, my last couple of streams, I've been doing the challenge series. So, you know, each day I spin a wheel with different challenges on it, and I try to accomplish this thing, which is hard to do, especially at my skill level. But it's something that is outside of just, I'm playing a video game, come and watch me play. Because most people will just, I can play the video game myself. You know, what is interesting about this stream? So I think it's really important to stream and try new things, because when you try new things, you're gonna learn what works and what doesn't, but you're gonna grow what you know technically, and you're gonna grow what you know in terms of becoming a better streamer and content creator. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I totally agree with that. I'm also like burning at 12:30 a.m. right now, so my brain is just kind of like whomp. But yeah, absolutely. When it's a content game for sure, and I think the thing is, like, you can play games to just have fun, and that's great. You could do that, but anybody that's watching, you're right, is just going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to log into my PlayStation and play with you, or Xbox or whatever. But the difference between like having fun doing that and then trying to find something fun and being creative, because it's a creative process, streaming. Really, when we're talking about streaming, we're really talking about content creating at the end of the day. It is a creative process on its own. And that's where you have to go and challenge yourself to create something that will be fun for you, first and foremost. Why would you do it if it's not fun for yourself? But secondly, to create things that are engaging for yourself as well, because it'll be engaging to your audience. So it's the concept is like, would you watch it yourself? Like, for me, I always did streams on Photoshop stuff, because, you know, I do go on YouTube to learn how to do some things in Photoshop, and that is the content I like to watch. And so I challenge myself to do things that I would want to watch myself. And I don't care if other people want to watch that, because when I find another person who wants to watch that same content as me, then we click, like online in the chat. And the rest of the people don't matter, right? Because it's that engagement I want. It's not the view count at the end of the day, right? So I agree. Having challenges for yourself and having challenges with the audience and getting people to be interested in what you're doing, but also being interested in what you're doing as well, personally, in your own content, right? And so it's like, yeah, I could just play Apex, like you said, or, you know, I'm a bad Apex player, so let's find a challenge of like how many times can I not die this hour?
Okay, Todd. So we talked a little bit about trying something different and challenging ourselves. Can you think of something where you did try something different and it didn't really go according to plan, or possibly you failed, and talk about what that was?
Like actually just at Odafest this year, one of the biggest problems we had this year was, we were required to schedule all of the events and everything. And one of the things that was a requirement from Odafest and was passed around, and that I had tried to plan for, was to grab content from the arcade and the tournaments on the breaks. And so this is in between the actual primary content. So on the break screen, you would see like Smash Bros from the tournament section, or you would see like Tetsu no Jin, the taiko drum game. Can't remember the name of it. From the arcade side, and I brought all the equipment, but nobody brought in like HDMI splitters for any of that. So I had this wicked awesome break screen, which wasn't pulling in content from these other areas because I messed up in bringing some additional equipment, but also I messed up in communicating that we might need splitters for a lot of these things. And so we ended up with a break screen that was just the Xbox console on the stage. And so during breaks, people would see us setting up the Xbox and that stuff. And it's just like, I should have made an additional break screen that did not have, an HDMI feed. I should have made an extra scene. And so it wasn't a failure. Like, the whole event went off really well. And what matters at these big events is that the people at the stage are happy, not necessarily the people on the stream, because the people on the stream were just trying to make jealous so that they can come down to the actual physical event. That's kind of how that works when you're doing a stream for a big event. And of course, it's there to log tournaments and stuff, but there weren't any tournaments at Odafest that were being streamed, so that obviously didn't apply there. So yeah, that was like the big blunder. And it was a pretty small blunder, but it's one of those things that's just like, yeah, I'm going to need to add more to my checklists every time, because I need to learn from this failure and this little component of failure and actually build up so that next time I don't run into that. And it's always an opportunity for growth. Every failure is an opportunity for growth. It's just life. It's the way it is.
Yeah. Can you think of something that you tried on stream that didn't go according to plan? And can you just give me an example of that? Because we've talked about trying to challenge ourselves and make our streams better. I mean, is there anything that you can think of where you tried something, it really didn't go according to plan, but maybe you were really glad that you tried it?
Like, that's like everything. Everything I do never goes according to plan. I'm trying to think of an actual time where I tried to do something different and it didn't go to plan. I think I got to flip the question on you, because for me, I did something new and it went better than planned. So I tried streaming my graphic design stuff instead of games. And it went really well. People were really interested. But there was one actually there is one stream I did, and it was to play and beat Final Fantasy VII on stream. And it did not go as well as planned. I forgot how long that game is. So it was not going to happen in one stream, right? I didn't even get to the end of disc 1 on the end of the first stream.
And
not
you
only
didn't have that big long text game FAQs text file that you could follow
right,
along
I did not
back
have
in the day
that.
either.
Yeah, game facts. Yeah, totally.
We just totally dated ourselves.
I loved that site, man.
It was a
That
really
was
good
the
site.
only way to. It was the only way to. It was always a giant TXT file, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so I was doing that, and I like, there was nobody paying attention, and there's nobody interested. And the reason why is because I was so darn interested in trying to beat the dang game. I forgot to talk to anybody. And it's a retro game, so people really aren't interested in looking at the game, right? Everybody's played Final Fantasy VII, or at least I hope everybody has played Final Fantasy VII in some form of sense. So they're not really interested in the game itself as content. And I'm here trying to beat this game because I'd never beaten the game. I gotten so close when I had the game originally on my Sony PlayStation. I was on the final disc. My brother deleted the save, and I haven't beaten a Final Fantasy since. And I was like, no, I'm going to beat this Final Fantasy VII on stream. You know what? Take that one offline. I need to beat it offline. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's on stream or not, because it didn't go as planned. And then you feel like a failure when you don't reach where you want to reach at the end of your stream. And then you feel like a knob because you didn't like interact with your audience at all, because you were just so focused on trying to beat this game. Yeah, it totally went south. And I was just like, you know, I don't think I'll do that again. I still want to beat Final Fantasy VII. I haven't beaten it. Still haven't beaten the original game. I know the new one's out, but I won't play the new one until I beat the original one.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an example where I try something. You know what I tried to do one time? Looking back on it, I was like, man, that was actually a really stupid idea. At the time, I thought it was a really good idea. So I don't know if people will remember the time where a lot of hate raids were going on Twitch. There were a lot of hate raids going on. And I was like, this sucks. Like, that people are having to go through hate raids and having to deal with it. And I was like, you know what? What can I do to brighten people's days a little bit? I don't remember if it was a birthday stream of mine or something, but I remember trying something like instead of a hate raid, we're going to do a love raid, and we're going to just raid people's channels and spread positivity. But thinking back on it, I was like, okay, I think people thought I did it to self-promote, and that wasn't it. Like, it wasn't received well. I can tell that the streamers were kind of like, this is weird, right? And in my head at that time, I was like, you know what, we're gonna go spread some positivity, and then we're gonna bring everyone back, you know, after hanging out in someone's stream for a while, and then we're gonna raid someone else and do a love raid for someone else and try to spread more positivity to other people. And yeah, I don't think it was, and I think I caught on after doing it to 2 people that I think people are thinking that I'm self-promoting, and I was just like, X. I'm stopping it right there.
Love raid became a cringe raid, hey?
Yeah, totally became a cringe raid. Yes. And again, at that time, I thought it was a really good idea, and you know, my intentions were good. And I think the streamers that I knew, probably after I got, you know, I've talked to them again, not about that, but I mean, just I've hung out in their streams and what have you, and they were completely normal with me. So I think they realized that I wasn't trying to self-promote, but maybe people in their chat thought I was trying to self-promote. And yeah, one of those things where I tried, it didn't work out, but I learned something from it. Totally. There's a lot of different things that you can do that can be interpreted as self-promotion. And thankfully, I think that was only the second time where I inadvertently self-promoted. So I'd like to switch gears a little bit. And both you and I became parents after starting our streaming journeys. Can you talk about a little bit, I guess, about becoming a parent and how that has changed things for yourself in terms of streaming or creating content?
Absolutely. I think because I adopted, so I had parental leave, but I also had an older child, so I had some very large pipe dreams, which did not turn out. I'm like, oh, well, I'm on parental leave. I'll be able to stream. Yeah, no. I think if you're a new parent, whether you're adopting an older child or you're like Dangles and you've got a newborn baby, especially if you're like Dangles and you got a newborn baby, your schedule goes out the window, just totally thrown out. For me, it wasn't quite as thrown out, but also there's this whole additional responsibility now, right? And I don't think I haven't streamed since Mason or my son has moved in. And so that's just because I haven't been able to find like a time that's going to fit for me. Hey, Dad.
Speaking of which, the baby's woken up.
Baby's awake. Yeah. So yeah,
I think
that's life for you, right?
Yeah. Some things just don't always go according to plan, like trying to film a podcast episode.
Yep,
but that's
absolutely.
Okay. I think he's going through a bit of a regression right now because he's learning to stand on his own. So next step, walking. Pun very intended. Next step. Anyways, okay. Go on.
Yes. So yeah, absolutely. So the schedule totally changed. I haven't streamed since my son's moved in with us. And I'm not even disappointed in it because I've just focused on the bigger events and broadcasting for other people as I try to figure out my schedule. I don't try to beat myself up over it. Because at the end of the day, the important thing for me is just, striking like a balance where everybody gets to live happily. So if I've got to sacrifice streaming for a little while, that's okay. I'm okay with that. I can always rebuild up a viewer base. I've got, viewers or followers and subscribers that have followed me and then they bug me on Discord constantly. We're like, hey, when are you going to stream again? Hey, when are you going to stream again? I'm like, when I feel like it is when I'm going to stream again. But I am really thankful that you're still interested in me wanting to be back on stream. So if you've got a loyal following, they will tune back in. So don't worry about that. If you've got followers already that are actually interested in and like who you are, and you're worried about losing everything when you become a parent, you're not. You're going to lose some. But that's the life. That's the fact of being a parent. You're going to lose some into like some of the life you had before you had kids anyways. So you're going to lose some viewers too. Not a big deal. When you come back, the ones that were really interested anyways, they're going to be back there anyways. So I don't worry about that too much. When I find my schedule, I will be back on streaming.
Yeah. My experience with that was, like you said, I ended up going on hiatus for a little while. And then I came back to streaming, even though I had my kid. And then it worked out with my schedule at work where I had Thursdays and Fridays off for a while. And then I was streaming every Thursday and Friday between 1 p.m. till about 4:30 p.m. or 5 p.m. or so. And then I built momentum back up again. And then I had the second baby. And then I had to go on hiatus again. And, I mean, it for me personally, I felt like, I worked really hard to kind of build myself up to, it's in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's not a lot, but, for when I was streaming consistently, I got up to about 15 average viewers. And then we had the second baby. And then I went on hiatus. And then I came back. And I felt like momentum was lost. But at the same time, it's like, I have two beautiful kids. And you know what? It's just a different chapter of my life. And that's completely okay. I mean, and now I have equipment. I am perfectly happy, and I'm really enjoying podcasting right now. It's just a different chapter of my life, and something that I want to try, and something that will, tap into a little bit more of my creative side. And again, one of those things why I wanted to do the podcast was, I've switched jobs, and I think it's really important to be a good communicator and try to cut out the ums and ahs and the likes. And I figured that by podcasting, it'll help me also with work and just being a better speaker in general. And I know if I have to go back into my editing software and constantly cut out ums and ahs and likes, then I'll be more conscious of it, and then hopefully cut more and more of that out of my everyday speech. So
oh, you're gonna be cutting a lot of ums and ahs from me.
yeah, but some part of it is keeping it sounding natural too. So you don't want to cut out too much. That's one thing I've learned is you want the conversation to sound natural. So if you're cutting out every breath and you're cutting out every and ah, it's a little bit jarring to listen to as well.
Might as well have had Siri do the text to speech thing.
All right, Todd. I guess before we end off here, you've talked about some of the things that have helped you. So challenging yourself, learning new things. You've talked about when you're streaming, turning the viewer count off. This channel is focused on people who are interested in starting streaming or people who are new to streaming. Is there anything that comes to mind in terms of a really quick piece of advice you'd want to give them?
Don't be like everybody else. And what I mean is, like, don't just be there playing games and streaming and expect success. Don't expect success if what you're doing is just playing games. And it doesn't actually, it doesn't even matter if you're playing games or if you're trying to be on stage or an actor or even a musician. Don't ever expect success just because you're doing what everybody else is doing. And even if you're doing something unique, don't expect success. What's going to happen is you're going to fail a lot. And you're only going to start succeeding when you start realizing the failures you are creating or that you are experiencing. And don't be upset when you fail, because those are just opportunities to learn from them. One of the things I always liked was Adam Savage and Mythbusters. Failure is always an option. Failure is almost guaranteed in everything you do, whether it's life or streaming. How you react after you experience a failure is going to be how you grow. You can either take failure and you can internalize that and say that you suck and that you're a failure yourself, or you can take that failure and go, look, I did something that people didn't really like or that just didn't work out well or that I didn't enjoy. So what can I do to make that better? And when you start doing that, that's when you find growth. You'll find growth internally with yourself. You'll find growth with your stream. You'll find even growth with just your friends and coworkers when you start learning from your failures. And that's where you'll start finding success.
Really powerful stuff. Thank you for sharing that, Todd. And I appreciate you taking the time again to share your knowledge and hang out here and be in this episode. Thank you so much again.
No worries. Thank you for your time and your questions and running this awesome podcast and being a wacky, wavy, inflatable, arm flailing tube man for your editing.